revealed. The sinister secrets of a haunted motel in northern Ontario. You must obey to survive. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white as the old station wagon sputtered yet again. She shot a glance at Ethan, his wide eyes glancing nervously out the window. The highway was a void, stretching endlessly into the dark woods, and every shadow felt alive. "Hang in there, buddy," she said, trying to mask the tremor in her voice, but it was hard to ignore the weight fitting into the pit of her stomach. Just as they were about to turn back to the last rest stop, the car let out a final groan. The engine died, leaving them stranded in the heart of nowhere. Desperation clawed at her as Ethan whimpered. Moments later, through the haze of trees, a flicker of neon caught her eye. The Maplewood Motel. A chill raced down Sarah's spine, a sense of caution wrapping around her heart. But with no other options, she pulled the car off the road, her pulse quickening as they climbed out, the air thick with foreboding. Inside, the lobby was adorned with outdated decor that seemed shrouded in disuse. The receptionist's smile stretched unnervingly wide, her eyes glinting in a way that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Welcome to Maplewood," the woman chirped, her voice echoing unnaturally in the hollow lobby. Shadows appeared in unexpected corners, flickering in and out like the dim lights above. She tried to reassure Ethan, who buried his face into his stuffed bear, sensing the wrongness surrounding them. As they arrived at their room, the door creaked ominously when opened. Sarah forced a smile for Ethan's sake as she stepped inside. The chill emitting from the bed was unnatural, sending shivers up her spine. She shuddered, fighting back the urge to flee. Once night enveloped the motel, dread coiled tighter around them. A framed photograph on the wall featured a family, their black and white smiles eerie and their eyes sagging with despair. Unsettling noises slithered through the hall. Whispers, intermittent laughter, the ghostly echoes of footsteps that paused too frequently outside their door. Sarah instinctively pulled Ethan closer, her heart thudding in her chest. To her horror, she overheard scuttled conversations among the staff, the ones who don't leave, and the price of their stay. An icy shiver trickled down her spine, drowning out her fatigue. Ethan, normally soundly asleep, began to scream. "Mom! No! Don't let them take me!" His nightmares twisted into violent pleas, raw and desperate. Each outburst sent ice-cold fear digging into Sarah's heart, as if the walls had ears, eager to consume murmurs of their fears. She soothed him as best as she could, but whispers of chilling truths whispered in the fabric of the air surrounding them. Lost souls, sinister rituals. Sarah's resolve to protect her child ignited. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, determined to leave before dawn's light washed over this horror. Sarah stepped outside, the hallway stretching infinitely before her, now insidiously long. Panic surged as she discovered every door compelled her back to the room, weaving a never-ending route trapping her in this nightmare. Shadows lurked, curling mockingly at the edges of her vision. Ethan's voice reverberated again from the distance, calling her name, the tone echoing with an urgency that sent her heart racing. As she sprinted toward the sound, dread gnawed at her insides. Every turn led her deeper into a sinister web, with the motel pulsating around her, alive and aware. Would she be forced to confront the dark truths entwined in the walls of Maplewood? Would she lose both her sanity and her son to the lurking shadows before they could escape? Sarah ran, breathless, fear thickening the air around her. Each step echoed sharply on the damp floor, the shadows stretching further, as if they were reaching for her. Ethan's voice faded, swallowed by the darkness that wrapped around her like a vice. She tried to picture the layout of the motel, but it warped with every hurried glance. Was the room still behind her, or had it vanished into the squirming maze? "Ethan," she called, her own voice feeling feeble against the relentless whispers. The chill creeping up her spine solidified into ice as a voice, low and raspy, answered back. "You shouldn't have come here." Her heart dropped. Sarah whipped around, scanning the damp corners of the hallway for the source, but saw nothing. Shadows danced just outside the reach of the flickering lights, and dread gripped her throat. This wasn't just fear, it was a primal instinct, warning her to turn back. But she couldn't abandon Ethan. She pressed forward, the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Each room she passed whispered its warnings, secret promises of the things that lurked behind closed doors. "Don't let them take you. Stay here forever." Just ahead, a small flicker caught her eye. A shadow, no, a figure stood at the end of the hallway, silhouetted against the weak glow of a lamp. The shape twisted and morphed continuously, and as Sarah approached, it became clearer, more chilling. It was a woman, her mouth stretched impossibly wide, lips twitching into a grotesque smile as a hollow laugh escaped her throat. "What do you want?" Sarah's voice trembled, barely more than a whisper, but the monstrosity before her didn't respond. Instead, it extended a long, bony finger towards a door nearby, room 207. All at once, images flashed in Sarah's mind. The family portrait on the wall, their wan smiles hiding despair and something much darker. A sharp instinct told her that behind that door lay the truth of this place. A revelation she had to unveil, even if it could mean danger. She stepped forward, her heart pounding to synchronize with the frantic rhythm of the shadows. With every inch closer, she felt a pressure building, almost as if the walls were pushing against her, trying to hold her back. But the urge to know the horror was greater. "No!" A voice shrieked from behind her. It was Ethan, scared and frantic. "Don't! Mom, please!" The woman's laughter rang out again. "You can't go in there. Not now, not ever." Fear shot through Sarah, twisting her gut. How was the motel alive? What did it want from them? But there was no time to think. She turned, wrenching the door handle. It was cold to the touch, sending jolts of dread up her arm as it opened slowly with an ominous creak. Inside was pitch black, but shadows shape-shifted and danced around her, beckoning her to step further. A sweet, sickly scent wafted out, intoxicating and strong. For a fleeting second, she hesitated, torn between the darkness and her son's cries behind her. "Mom, don't go in there." His panicked voice cracked against the heavy atmosphere of the motel, making her heart ache for him. Before she could decide, a sudden rush of wind forced the door open wider, and a myriad of voices swirled out, merging into one deafening chorus. "Join us forever." In a split-second decision, Sarah stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind her with a resounding finality, locking out the world she once knew. Inside, the room pulsed with an energy that felt almost alive. To her horror, she saw the walls lined with photographs, faces twisted in despair, eyes wide with terror. But it was the last photo that froze her blood, the final twist of fate. A family, indistinguishable but undeniably familiar, their shadows dark and heavy, as if they were trapped in time. The realization hit her like a brick. This couldn't be. The echoes of the voices climbed to a shrill pitch. "You're one of us now." Sarah blinked in disbelief. Had they truly come to a haunted motel, or was it merely a horrific trap designed to ensnare them? With a heart full of terror, Sarah turned to look around, searching desperately for a way out. But as the walls pulsed rhythmically, whispering secrets she couldn't comprehend, one thought loomed above all else. If she was locked inside, where was Ethan? Sarah's breath caught. The shadows began to writhe closer, separated from the visions on the wall, morphing into something tangible. A deep chill slid through her, but beneath it burned the bright, loud sound of Ethan's panicked cries, echoing against the flood of darkness that ensnared her deep within the motel's bowels. She would have to fight for her son now, against whatever malevolence lurked in the weighty shadows. But who or what could she trust when it came to survival in the Maplewood? The door trembled, whispers gaining volume, and for the first time, Sarah felt a flicker of hope dashed against her will. She had to find Ethan, no matter what price could come of it. But as she reached for the door handle, something pulled at her from behind, and it was no longer just a monster's embrace she had to fear. What awaited on the other side was only the beginning of a horror she wasn't sure she could survive. The shadows swirled and pulsed around Sarah, drawing closer as if responding to her fear. She could feel a malevolent presence pressing against her back, urging her to succumb to their dark embrace. A surge of desperation ignited within her. Ethan needed her. She couldn't let this place claim him too. With trembling hands, Sarah gripped the handle of the door, her heart racing. The whispers intensified, becoming a chaotic thrumming in her ears. "Stay, stay forever," they chanted, the words weaving into a tapestry of dread. She wouldn't give in. Summoning her courage, she pulled the door open just enough to peek beyond the threshold. The hall was alive with flickering lights and shifting shadows. "Ethan?" she called again, her voice cracking under the weight of dread. A familiar voice pierced through the cacophony, igniting both fear and relief. "Mom!" It was Ethan, echoing through the tainted corridors, desperate yet strong. "I'm here. Where are you?" The sound seemed to fracture the air, momentarily silencing the sinister whispers. The woman's cruel laughter receded into the background, but Sarah knew it was only temporary. "Ethan, I'm coming," she yelled, darting through the doorway. The very air felt thick and alive, as if the motel itself was trying to hold her back. She sprinted down the hallway, chasing the sound of her son's voice. Each footfall was met with an unsettling resonance, like the place was breathing alongside her, in rhythm with her panic. "Stay away from him." A growl erupted from the shadows, and Sarah stumbled but kept running. Behind her, the hideous figure of the woman materialized once more, her contorted smile stretching impossibly wide. "You can't protect him. He belongs to us now." Sarah pushed herself harder, willing her body to move faster against the mounting dread that threatened to swallow them both. She skidded to a halt before a door marked room 208. It was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness yawning at her like a mouth ready to swallow her whole. "Mom! In here!" Ethan's voice called again, more fervent now, insistent. Without thinking, she shoved the door open and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit by a single, flickering bulb, casting eerie shadows against the cracked walls. The air was thick with mustiness, layered with decades of despair. But there was Ethan on the floor, wide-eyed and trembling, his small frame dwarfed by the monstrous shadows encroaching from the corners. "Mom, please!" He reached for her, but between them, a figure emerged from the dark. The woman. Her ethereal body glided closer, eyes gleaming with hunger. "You can't save him, not from this," she hissed, the voice curling around Sarah like smoke inhaled in panic. "No!" Sarah screamed, surging forward despite the terror that thrashed at her heels. The woman raised a hand, fingers elongated and bony, ready to snatch Ethan away. But Sarah wouldn't let it happen. Fueled by raw instincts, she dove towards her son just as the woman lunged. She felt an icy grip on her arm, slick and poisonous, trying to drag her away. "Ethan, grab my hand." With all her strength, Sarah pulled Ethan close, but the shadowy figure cursed, her face transforming into a mask of rage. "You will all belong to me." The walls of the room trembled, the air vibrating with fury as if the motel itself was rebelling against her defiance. In the chaos, Sarah glimpsed a small window in the corner of the room. A glimmer of hope ignited in her. It was an escape. "Now!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. They sprinted toward the window, but the shadows clawed at them, pulling her back. "What's happening?" Ethan cried, his voice mingling with the howls of the enveloping darkness. "Just hold on," Sarah roared, fighting against the onslaught of terror as she grabbed the window's edge. But the shadows reached higher, their cold tendrils creeping closer. Ready to reclaim their bounty, she flung herself toward the open window. Sarah knew they had just one shot. But when she looked back, that witching woman grinned wider than ever, the last thing she'd see before they jumped into freedom. But would freedom truly await them? The shadows thrashed and twisted, and with a final desperate plunge, they leapt into the unknown. But what lay on the other side was the last thing Sarah ever expected. Could there be a way out of this polluted nightmare? Or were they leaping from the fire straight into the inferno? The ground beneath them felt soft, almost like falling into a thick, cloying fog. Sarah gasped as she landed, instinctively wrapping her arms around Ethan, her heart pounding in her chest. They were no longer in the motel, but where exactly were they? The air was heavy, tinged with a metallic scent that set her nerves on edge. Around them stretched an endless expanse of gray swirling mists twisted upward like ghostly fingers reaching for the unseen sky. Shadows danced at the periphery of her vision, whispering secret words she couldn't catch. Silence reigned, but it was the kind that screamed, deafening and all-consuming. "Mom, where are we?" Ethan's voice trembled, a soft murmur, barely cutting through the weight of despair. "I don't know," Sarah replied, scanning their surroundings. "But we need to keep moving." They picked a direction, stepping cautiously, the ground damp and unstable. With every step, Sarah felt as if they were being watched. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but where to? Panic twisted her gut, creating a knot of dread. The shadows might have followed them through the leap. "Mom, look!" Ethan pointed ahead, his small finger quaking. A dark figure loomed in the fog, half submerged in the mist, its outline indistinct. "There's someone there. Stay close to me," Sarah said, adrenaline surging as fear gripped her. She moved faster, pulling Ethan along as they approached the silhouette. As they grew closer, it gained substance, a specter clothed in tattered rags, its face hidden beneath an obscuring hood. "Welcome," it rasped, the voice slithering out like a serpent through the underbrush. "To the space between the living and the lost." Sarah's skin prickled with unease. The figure exuded an aura that drew her closer even as it terrified her. "What do you want?" she asked, determination pushing through her fear. "Only what is owed," it replied cryptically, the hood rising to reveal hollow eyes that pulsed with a dark light. "You sought to escape. But this place," it trailed off, glancing back into the murk, "is a labyrinth of decisions. Life and darkness are intertwined here. Choose wisely, and you may find your way without waiting for further explanation." The being faded back into the shadows, swallowed by the fog. "What does that mean?" Ethan whispered, clutching Sarah's arm tightly. "I don't know." Sarah felt hollow, the air thick with uncertainty. "But we have to keep moving." As they walked, the fog shifted, revealing glimpses of the past. A child's laughter echoed from one direction, the haunting wail of a woman from another. Images flashed like old film reels, laughter melting into cries, homes consumed by shadows, people lost and forgotten. "What is this place?" Ethan pulled at her sleeve, voice quivering with fear. "It feels like everyone who's ever been taken here, they're all trapped," Sarah whispered, gripping her son's hand tighter. She needed to shield him from the overwhelming sorrow that seemed to ooze from the very ground. But the whispers grew louder, becoming an intoxicating melody that wrapped around them like smoke. Were they memories? Or were they the remnants of those the motel had claimed? The sound began to morph, coiling into sinister laughter and deep sorrow. "Mom, I feel funny," Ethan murmured. His eyes glazed over slightly, lost within the depths of the sorrowful echoes. "Ethan, stay with me." Panic surged forth as she watched his face shift, the shadows inching closer, attempting to pull him into their gloom. "Focus on my voice." She clutched him, shaking him slightly. Behind them, the laughter morphed into a wail, echoing eerily in the vastness of the dark. "You can't take him." Suddenly, a light flickered in the distance, a flicker of hope. Without thinking, Sarah started running toward it, Ethan struggling to keep up. The shadows clawed at their heels, desperately trying to drag them back into despair. As they neared the light, they heard voices, unrecognizable and filled with anguish. "Help us! Help us!" they cried, but their pleas faded with each desperate step. Then, almost magically, the light pulsed, illuminating. A doorway nestled within fog. Hope surged through Sarah. "This has to be it." "Mom, wait!" Ethan warned, his voice barely above a whisper. But it was too late. They reached the doorway, the air around them crackling with energy. Just as she was about to step through, the laughter swelled to a deafening roar. Shadows converged, blocking their escape, swirling around them with a vengeance. Your choice, the entity's voice echoed from beyond. What will you sacrifice to escape? Sarah's breath hitched. She had to choose. Will she risk everything for a path out, or would she be consumed by the weight of their fate? As the shadows reached toward them, she felt the weight of the decision bearing down. Ethan, we need to, but the mists thickened, swallowing her words. What choice lay ahead? And at what cost? Would they flee from the darkness or surrender to it? The shadows loomed large, a swirling mass of despair and malevolence, and Sarah felt the oppressive weight tighten around her throat. She forced herself to breathe, each inhale a struggle against the thickening darkness. Ethan, listen to me, she said, voice sharp with fear. Whatever happens next, we stick together. The shadows shifted, whispering maddening fragments of voices, taunting her, urging her to turn back. Leave him, they hissed, each syllable laced with a venomous seduction. No, she shouted, clutching Ethan's arm tighter. I won't abandon you. Just then, the air shimmered around the doorway. It pulsed like a heartbeat, flickering in and out of sight, as if caught in a struggle between worlds. Sarah's heart raced, a primal beat echoing the panic beneath her breast. It has to be safe, she urged herself. We have to get to the light. But doubt wrapped itself around her mind like the fog coiling around her ankles. What lay behind that door? A way out, or a different level of nightmare? Mom! Ethan tugged on her, his eyes wide and terrified. What if it's a trick? A flash of anger shot through her. We can't stay here. We can't let them take you. Suddenly, several shadowy figures coalesced nearby, flickering in and out. The humid air crackled between them, alive with unholy energy. One emerged closer, a face now visible, its features unnervingly human yet distorted. It grinned, mouths too wide, teeth sharp as knives. You missed your chance, sweetheart, it crooned, dripping sadism. And now the choice is made for you. Mom! Ethan quivered, pulling back. A primal scream caught in her throat, rising up like bile. No! She shouted, lunging toward the doorway. If there was any chance to escape, it lay ahead. With Ethan anchoring her resolve, she pushed through the shadows, wrenching the boy with her, the warmth of his small body a dangerous comfort. They burst toward the light, but a surge of darkness rushed forward, engulfing them before they could reach the safety. Sharp claws gripped her, immeasurable strength pulling her and Ethan apart. No! Let go of him! Ethan screamed, a sound of raw terror that sliced through the thick fog. Make your choice! The shadows clamored, laughter echoing around them, desperate and wild, drowning out her motherly instincts. Sarah's heart raced. I'll do anything, she cried, panic surging through her veins. Anything to save him. The shadows halted, the laughter fading into silence, replaced only by an ominous stillness. For an inhale, time stretched, the world suspended. Then take the path of surrender, the guttural voice intoned, drawing her gaze toward the doorway again, which pulsed more insistently now, beckoning. To save him, you must offer yourself. No, felt like the ground dropped beneath her. To save her son, she'd have to give up everything? A pit of dread opened in her stomach. But she couldn't let fear dictate her choices anymore. Ethan, she gasped, her focus shifting to her son, whose frightened eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Whatever happens, the shadows lunged, reaching for her with chilling urgency. The laughter flooded back, chaotic and dizzying. Your choice, Sarah. Sacrifice binds you. For freedom, you must, as the pull of the shadows gained strength. Sarah felt a flicker of resolve ignite within her. Somewhere in the recesses of her mind, a piece of clarity emerged. Memories of love, hope, and the reminder that the darkness wanted to break her. Just as the shadows began to envelope her, she screamed, You won't take me or my son. A blinding flash exploded from the doorway. A warmth spread through her, subduing the coldness encasing her heart, igniting the shadows into a storm of chaos. What was that warmth? Was it strength? Or something more? Ethan echoed her, "Mom," and somewhere beneath the suffocating terror, a rising hope bloomed. She was not alone. But was it enough? With fingers of shadow clawing at her skin, she lunged toward the threshold, the doorway bursting with light. As Sarah and Ethan plunged forward, she felt the chaos attempt to follow, grasping helplessly at their retreating forms. Then everything went white. When the radiance faded, they found themselves back in the motel room they had tried to escape, the stale air yet dim and heavy with a surreal aftertaste. Had it all been a nightmare? But behind her, a familiar laugh echoed, a haunting sound of dark joy too vibrantly real to dismiss. "Welcome back," whispered the voice of the entity, the shadows already gathering around. This time, the walls of reality had begun to warp. What had they awakened? As they turned, Sarah felt panic claw at her insides. The door was now shut tight, sealed against any escape. What fresh horror waited to be unleashed? And how would they confront a darkness that refused to let them go? The silence stretched in the motel room, thick like the fog outside. The walls seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding as if alive, echoing the muffled thuds of Sarah's heart. Ethan's small hand trembled in hers, a fragile warmth that reminded her of their precarious safety. But the laughter hung like a noose, tightening around them with each passing second. "Mom, what's going to happen?" His voice, a whisper coated in fear, sent a chill racing down her spine. She wanted to promise him everything would be okay, but the darkness looming behind her felt too real, too hungry. "We don't know yet," she replied, forcing calmness into her tone. "But we must stay close." The shadows retreated slightly, swirling like smoke but never fully leaving, their edges fraying against the flickering light. A figure began to materialize within the darkness, pale and elongated. The face was familiar yet twisted, an echo of someone she once knew. Sarah, the voice was sweet, yet it carried an underlying pitch of malice. "You're back to play again." It stepped forward, revealing eyes that glowed like embers, simmering with a hunger that sent daggers through her resolve. "No," Sarah shouted, backing away, pulling Ethan with her. "Get away from us." But the figure only smiled wider, impossibly so, stretching its face into a grotesque mask. "You're here, and now it's time to remember what you've forgotten." Panic surged like wildfire in her veins. "We didn't forget anything," she snapped, defensively. "This isn't a game. Is that so?" It turned its head at an unnatural angle, its eyes scanning the room as shadows danced in delight. "Come close, dear Sarah. You owe it this much. We all miss you." Ethan squeezed her hand tighter, his knuckles white, his body stiff with fear. "What does it mean, Mom?" She looked down at him, her heart breaking. How could she explain a torment that lingered in her own mind, a terror that threatened to rip them apart? "Stay behind me," she ordered softly, shielding him from the figure advancing toward them, the shadows crawling closer like insatiable serpents. Then, the air cracked like thunder, rattling the window panes and shaking the floor beneath them. The entity reveled in the chaos, laughing as if it were a conductor summoning its orchestra. The sound reverberated around the room, twisting Sarah's stomach into knots. "Your sacrifice was just the beginning," the creature rasped. "You opened the door to our world. And now we want what's ours." A jolt of fear shot through her. "What do you want?" she demanded, though terror gripped her throat. The grin on the creature widened to a disturbing degree, eyes shimmering malevolently. "You know, don't you? It's never really just about the sacrifice." Without warning, the shadows surged forward, clawing at her, pricking her skin like 1,000 tiny thorns. "Ethan," she gasped, feeling herself being pulled into the writhing mass. Ethan cried, panic overtaking him. With a surge of desperation, Sarah lunged forward, pulling Ethan to her chest. "I won't let you take him." She felt strength flood through her, a defiance rising against the darkness as memories cascaded through her mind. Love, laughter, moments that defined them. "Then you will suffer," the entity hissed, eyes narrowing in fury. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. The shadows tucked themselves beneath her skin, cold fear wrapping around her heart. But in that moment of despair, Sarah felt an unexpected flicker, a realization. She was the one in control. No, she yelled, channeling the love she felt for her son, directing it toward the shadows that sought to consume them. You win. Light erupted, forcing the shadows back, breaking their hold. The entity screeched, the sound reverberating through the infinitude of dark space. But just as quickly, another wave of shadows crashed in, thicker and more feral than before. You think you're stronger than the darkness? It mocked, lunging toward Ethan. Sarah's breath quickened as terror clawed at her mind. Ethan, listen to me. We have to fight together. You hold on to that light inside you. I don't want to, he screamed, tears spilling down his cheeks. Trust me. Keep your eyes on me. As they battled against the tides, Sarah sensed the walls resonate with the struggles of countless souls, caught within. What had they awakened in this rotten motel? What darkness had they truly invited upon themselves? With all her strength, she shouted, "We will break free." But in the suffocating darkness, another laugh echoed, deeper and more sinister. You cannot escape, dear Sarah. The threads of fate have already begun to weave. A chill ran down her spine as she realized this was only the beginning of their torment. What else lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to unveil its dreadful secrets? The shadows recoiled for a heartbeat, as if surprised by Sarah's defiant explosion of light. But that moment of triumph was brief, just a flicker against the all-consuming darkness that surged back with renewed ferocity. The thing looming before them, its ghastly grin bending its features in ways flesh should never bend, was relentless. Why fight, Sarah? You know the truth shines only to reveal the darkness you hide within. It hissed, its voice a slithering whisper that dripped with malevolence. Ethan clung to her waist, paralyzed with terror. His small body quaked, a fragile shield against the horror that threatened to swallow them whole. Mom, I can't see, he cried, his voice cracking. Hold on, she urged in desperation, wrapping an arm around him. She fought against the creeping dread that threatened to paralyze her as fierce shadows wrapped like cold chains around her limbs. Your son carries your darkness, Sarah, the entity taunted. He is a gift or a curse, whatever you choose. She felt a rising tidal wave of despair crashing against her heart. Thoughts of the past flooded her mind, her mom's warnings, the eyes watching from behind curtains, the stories she thought were just myths. No, Sarah shouted, shaking her head as if to dismiss the memories dragging her down. You will not take him. Yet, even as she felt reassured by her resolve, visions of her choices, the decisions that had led them here, soured her spirit. A churning pit formed in her stomach, lining every wretched decision with a sickening twist. The shadows expanded, pressing against them, eager to explore the depths of her guilt. Remember those you loved and lost, it crooned. They're waiting for you. From the other side, images flickered in her mind. Derek's laughter, their shared moments, the car crash. She shuddered, enveloped in anguish that wrapped tightly around her, pulling the breath from her lungs. Stay with me, Ethan. Focus on us. Our love, she desperately whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her fear. As if in response, a surge of warmth emanated from Ethan, stunning her for a breath. The boy's small hand glowed faintly, a beacon fighting the dark tide that enveloped them. Mom, I'm scared. I don't want to forget. Tears brimmed in her eyes. You won tea, we won tea. Remember our moments, the funerals, the laughter. Just hold on to them. The shadows shrieked with rage, swirling like a tempest intent on erasing them from existence. You can't redefine reality with dreams, dear Sarah. The figure lunged at Ethan, its hands reaching, claw-like and greedy. No, Sarah screamed, and her heart raced as she stepped forward, shielding her son. A flash of light washed over them again, forcing the creature and its darkness into retreat, revealing parts of the motel, a glimpse of peeling wallpaper, dirt-stained floors, and something moving behind the walls. What the hell was that? Sarah gasped, blinking as the transient light flickered like a dying bulb. Mom! Please! Ethan cried, his voice trembling. But even as she clutched him tightly, the shadows encroached once more, their whispers merging with the laughter echoing from the dark corners. Join us, Sarah. The past is behind you. Let us show you what lies ahead. Before she could respond, a sudden thud resonated from inside the walls, flat and heavy like a heartbeat. Their adversary smirked, its body shifting into nothingness, melting back into the depths of the shadows. Will you choose to follow the light or descend into darkness? Sarah narrowed her eyes, feeling the tension, the pressure of something ancient and unfathomable weighing on them. We'll choose life. You're wrong. But the shadows laughed again, a sound that curled around them like smoke. The room trembled. Frightening echoes grew louder whispers, moans, despair striking against her ears like rain. Will you abandon the truth to keep your son safe? What do you mean? Her voice rang out, swallowed by the growing cacophony. Tell me what you want. Everything. It hissed, merging with the walls, as another thud reverberated, and faint scratching noises began to rise from deep within the wooden planks, like sinister claws clawing their way out. In that moment, she realized, they weren't alone. Something long locked away was waking up. Ethan. As she spun to face her son, her heart dropped. His eyes had turned deep, almost hollow, a reflection of horror mirrored in their depths. He was slipping away. What ancient doom had they stumbled upon? What other horrors lay beyond the walls, waiting for their call? Ethan. Sarah shook him fiercely, panic pulsating through her veins. His eyes, once filled with innocent light, now seemed to absorb the darkness around them. It was as though some unseen force had stolen his spirit, leaving only a shell behind. Mom, it hurts. His voice was but a whisper, lost in the chaos, and the shadows were closing in, their whispers echoing her worst fears. No, no, no. The shadows clawed at her resolve, feeding off her doubt. Ethereal fingers brushed her skin, cold and clammy, drawing her toward the depths of despair. Fight it, Ethan. Her heart pounded like thunder in her ears as she felt the grotesque presence within the walls stirring. It wanted them. It craved the warmth of their hope, the very essence of their existence. In a desperate attempt, Sarah closed her eyes and pictured Derek's face. She imagined his laughter, a light cutting through the howling wind that surrounded them, and focused on that beacon, trying to channel it into their reality. I won't let you take him, she yelled, standing protectively in front of her son, desperation coursing through her. She could feel the shadows recoil, as if even they could sense her fierceness. Do you truly believe love can save you? The entity's voice jeered, echoing off the walls. Love is weakness, and weakness invites suffering. Love is strength, she shouted back, digging her nails into Ethan's shoulder, anchoring them to their shared memories. It's the only thing that matters. As if responding to her fierce declaration, Ethan's hand pulsed with that unfamiliar light again, and she felt a tingling warmth radiate from his small fingers. Mom, I remember, he murmured, drawing her eyes back to his. For a fleeting moment, the emptiness faded, replaced by the flicker of recognition. But just as quickly as it sparked, the shadows surged forward. No, you're not strong enough. The walls shook violently, and the clamor intensified. The thudding within them transformed into a rhythmic pounding, like 1,000 hearts in unison. Shadows writhed and coiled, clawing at the integrity of their sanctuary. I'm scared. Ethan's voice broke again, trembling, as fresh waves of terror gripped him like shackles. Think of the happiest moment you can remember, Sarah cried, her voice cracking. Hold on to that. A single memory broke through the fog the day they had gone to the fair, everything alight with joy, laughter spilling like confetti into the atmosphere. But even that felt distant now, faded like an old photograph. The shadows clawed at her, bitterly mocking her resolve. Suddenly, a deafening crash erupted from the center of the wall. The sound rang like a bell tolling the end of days. Wooden splinters flew in every direction, and a grotesque figure burst forth, a patchwork of shadows and nightmares made flesh. Its eyes glowed malevolently, two burning coals of incomprehensible malice. "Look at what you've unleashed," it bellowed, a deafening crescendo that drowned out their frantic heartbeats. "This is your legacy, Sarah. Embrace it, Ethan." She lunged forward to shield him as the creature lunged for them, teeth glinting like shards of broken glass. In that moment, everything slowed as adrenaline surged through her. She could either let fear choke the light out of them or push back, refusing to bow to the shadows. Sarah drew upon every ounce of love she could muster. "You will not have us," she screamed, holding Ethan close as a strange blue light enveloped them, stronger this time, a cocoon of vivid memories and emotions swirling around them. The entity shrieked in rage, recoiling from the brilliant aura. But just as they felt the surge of hope solidify around them, the motel trembled beneath their feet, an earthquake born of anguish and wrath. The walls creaked and sagged, threatening to swallow them into an abyss of darkness. "What do we do? What does it want?" Ethan cried, his voice wavering amid the chaos. "Whatever it is, we need to know, we need to understand." Sarah shouted back, voicing something she hadn't let herself consider until now. But time was unkind, and the shadows were coiling tighter, drawing them closer to a destiny they desperately sought to evade. Before she could conjure a plan, the walls rumbled again, and with it came another shattering clamor. Something powerful was on its way. "Ethan, we must find the source. We need to stop this." Her heart raced as she took his hand, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. With the grotesque figure looming over them, the walls collapsing, and the shadows whispering temptations of surrender, they had no choice but to face the unknown terror that lurked beyond the light. What more could be awakened if they dared to reveal the truth? Would knowing the answers set them free, or damn them to eternal darkness? Their hands clasped tightly, Sarah and Ethan plunged deeper into the chaos as the walls shimmered and shook around them. The air crackled with tension, and every moment was an eternity. Shimmering shadows spiraled and lashed out, like the tentacles of some ravenous beast eager to drag them down into the darkness. "I can't hold it back much longer, Mom." Ethan trembled, his face pale, eyes wide. The light from his hand flickered like a dying flame, illuminating their surroundings just enough to catch glimpses of horror, dried blood stains on the floor, walls etched with symbols that seemed to writhe as they stared. "Stay close. Don't forget the fair," she urged, pushing through the panic that threatened to consume her. "Mom, look." Ethan's voice broke through the haze of terror as he pointed towards a doorway hidden behind a mass of dark tendrils. It flickered in and out of view, pulsating like an ominous heart that could lead them to safety or doom. They dashed toward the doorway, the shadows clawing desperately at their heels. Each step felt like running through thick mud. The shadows were everywhere, taunting, whispering vile thoughts that crept into Sarah's mind. Love was weakness. They were losing the battle. "No," she shouted, shaking her head, pushing the thoughts away. She had to focus, had to believe. "Ethan, let us go." They plunged into the doorway just as the bellowing entity roared again, a guttural sound that vibrated through the air, shaking the very foundation of the building. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the flickering light casting monstrous shapes on the walls. What awaited them was an old, dusty office filled with relics of the past, maps tangled with red thread, newspapers crammed with gruesome headlines, and photographs of smiling families, their eyes scratched out. A chill ran through Sarah. Such artifacts warned of souls lost within these walls, victims of the same darkness they now faced. "What is this place?" Ethan whispered, his eyes darting anxiously. "I don't know, but it feels important. We need to find something that can help." As Sarah rummaged through the clutter, her fingers traced the surface of an ancient journal, its leather cover cracked and worn. She opened it, revealing pages filled with frantic scrawlings. Words of hope and despair battled against each other, twisted with grief and madness. They were trapped," she mumbled, her voice shaking. "The ones before us, they tried to fight back." But Ethan's eyes widened. "But what? They failed. The weight of those words hung heavily in the air. With each revelation, hope seemed to wither like a flame deprived of oxygen. She flipped through the pages feverishly. Wait, look. They mention a way to confront it, a counterspell. We need to gather strong memories. Suddenly, darkness surged at the doorway, coiling in like a living serpent. The grotesque figure was coming for them again, fury written in its every feature. You think you can defy your fate? It snarled, face contorting into forms of twisted agony and rage. No, Sarah cried, clutching the journal tightly. We will fight. Ethan gripped her hand, his light flickering to life once more. Together, he shouted, determination igniting within him. The shadows fell silent for a moment, as if calculating their next move. Then, with a deafening roar, the entity lunged. It unleashed a wave of darkness that swept over Sarah, suffocating her breath and clouding her thoughts. Focus on the memories, Ethan, she shouted, feeling the pull of despair trying to wrap around her heart. We have to fight back, we can use the memories against it. But the shadows crawled deeper, pulling at her consciousness, tempting her to surrender, to retreat into silence. Sarah struggled against it, feeling it burrow into her thoughts. What if it was too late? What if she and Ethan were simply another tale lost to the shadows? In a final act of will, Sarah surged with love, reaching out, determined to ignite the strongest hug of her life in her mind the way Derek embraced them both, complete and unyielding. But would her love be enough? Would the warmth withstand the chill of unending despair? The darkness roared again, that terrible laughter echoing in her core. Your love cannot save you. With everything she had, Sarah pushed back, the light responding, but could they hold out? All around them, the motel moaned and groaned. One truth hammered loudly in her mind. They must confront the darkness head-on or succumb forever. Would they be strong enough to turn the tide, or be lost to the whispers in the dark? Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. Sarah's voice trembled and steadied as she whispered, "We need to find out what this creature truly wants and destroy it before it takes everything." What lay just beyond that door, beyond this moment of terror? As the shadows surged once more, they could only brace for the impending storm, knowing that answers lurked within the unknown, ready to reveal more unspeakable terror. The motel's oppressive air pinched at Sarah's chest, but she gripped the journal like a lifeline. Ethan's small fingers wrapped around hers, the warmth grounding her as waves of darkness lashed out. This was their moment. Listen, Ethan, she urged, her voice steady amidst the chaos. We're going to fight together. Remember the happiest times, the fair, ice cream, that camping trip with Dad? Those memories are our weapons against this darkness. Ethan's face lit up, the flickering glow from his hand brightening just a bit. The fair, he echoed, squeezing her hand tighter. The Ferris wheel. It was so bright. Yes, just like that. Hold on to it. The shadows writhing outside the doorway paused, as if intrigued. With each second that passed, an electric pulse throbbed in the room, feeding off their memories. The pages of the journal fluttered under her fingers, whispering secrets like a chorus chanting in the dark. She had to find the spell, they had to confront the entity once and for all. Here, she gasped, pointing to a passage that described an incantation meant to bind the entity to its own darkness. But just before she could read it aloud, the grotesque figure surged into view, a human nightmare, all twisted features and chilling laughter. You think you can use your memories against me? It taunted, shadows spiraling around it like snakes ready to strike. You will regret it. No, Sarah shouted fiercely. We reject your power over us. We choose to remember love, not fear. The entity's laughter faltered for a brief moment as if caught off guard. With newfound strength, Ethan began to chant along with Sarah, focusing on the essence of their shared happiness, the bright lights of the fair, the joyous shout of sheer delight, the warmth of family togetherness. As they recited the incantation, light erupted from Ethan's hand, expanding like a bubble, pushing back the encroaching shadows. The figure writhed in agony, its face twisting in furious denial. You think that will save you? You will all perish here. But Sarah felt the embers of their memories roaring to life within. "Not today," she declared, pushing her voice against the wailing darkness. "Your time is over." In a fierce glimmer, they reached the final words of the spell, and together, they shouted it into the chaos. The light engulfed the room, illuminating every corner, pushing the shadows back as if the sun had burst through a storm. The entity let out a deafening shriek that reverberated around them, shaking the very foundation of the motel. The shadows recoiled, unraveling around the edges, retreating like a wave fleeing the shore. But they weren't safe yet. The ground trembled as the motel grunted under the strain, walls cracking and bending. "We have to finish this," Sarah yelled, barely able to hear herself over the entity's wrath. Fueled by the last reserves of love and hope, they pressed on. "By the light of our memories, we bind you to your darkness." With a final surge, the essence of their love glowed brighter, forming a barrier around the entity, drenching it in their light. The cries of the trapped souls echoed one last time before blending with the influx of brilliant luminescence that pulsed, hotter and brighter. Then it imploded, the air filled with a violent burst of light, and just as quickly as it had begun, it ended. Silence fell, the motel trembling as if it had released a long-held breath. "Mom!" Ethan cried, the flicker in his hand dimming but not extinguishing. "Did we do it?" She collapsed to her knees, breathing in the fading warmth and scent of hope. "I think we did, Ethan," but uncertainty laced her voice as she glanced around. The walls were still, but the oppressive darkness had lifted. A thin beam of sunlight filtered through a gap, illuminating the dust that danced lazily in the air. They were still in the motel, but something was different, lighter, somehow. Ethan's eyes sparkled with the remnants of their victory. "Can we go home now?" "Yes, sweetie. We can go home." They pushed through the door, stepping out into the wide, healing light of day. The woods seemed serene now, and the station wagon awaited them, sitting innocently by the roadside. Sarah turned once more to glance at the maplewood, beauty battling the darkness that once reigned over it. "Let it be a home for all those who need shelter, not for the ones who seek to trap." She inhaled deeply, the air fresh and filled with possibility. As they climbed back into the car, Ethan looked up at her with wide eyes, filled with innocence and joy. "Do you think they're okay now?" "Maybe they will be," she replied gently, gripping the wheel with new determination. "Just like us." With one last look in the rearview mirror, she saw the motel fade into the distance, a glimpse of wildflowers blooming in its wake. She could still feel the tug of darkness on her heart, but love would always be their anchor, shining bright against the shadows. "Now, let us get some ice cream," she said, glancing at Ethan, whose eyes twinkled with happiness. "You deserve a treat after all that." "Yeah." He laughed, and the sound filled the car with warmth, chasing away any lingering dread. As they pulled onto the road, the world stretched ahead of them full of light, promise, and endless possibilities. They would carry this victory with them, a badge against the shadows, forever ready to confront whatever came next. But as the final remnants of the Maplewood Motel slipped from view, an unsettling thought crawled through her mind. What if the darkness had just retreated? What if a new horror awaited in another place? One thing was for certain: whatever trials ahead, they would face them together, bonded by love and the undeniable light that had saved them once before. And as they drove into the horizon, Sarah whispered a silent promise to herself and Ethan. They would never be trapped again. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm's hunger. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Remember, true fans like you understand how vital it is to support the channel through these actions.